My friends, we live in an age that seems to press worry into every corner of the heart. Each day brings its burdens, each tomorrow its unanswered questions. And if one is not careful, the mind begins to carry a weight far heavier than it was ever meant to bear. Worry disguises itself as responsibility, yet it is in truth a thief, stealing peace, stealing sleep, and stealing the quiet trust that should mark a soul that knows it is not abandoned. The tragedy of worry is that it accomplishes nothing of worth. No man has lengthened his days by anxious thought. No woman has solved her deepest sorrow by turning it over endlessly in her mind. Worry is a wheel that spins furiously but goes nowhere, and it exhausts the spirit as it turns. But if worry is empty, trust is full. To trust is to lean into the arms of one whose wisdom outstretches the grasp of our imagination. We may think ourselves clever, we may draw out plans and map out futures, but our sight is a small lantern in a vast night. God's vision is the sun itself, revealing what is hidden from us and shining on paths we could not have chosen without his hand. It is pride that demands to know every step before it is taken, and humility that says, I will walk forward though the path bends, because the one who leads me cannot fail. Because what an easy thing to surrender control, for our hearts crave certainty. We think if we could only arrange circumstances in our favor, if we could only secure the right outcome, then peace would come. But peace does not arrive by conquest, it arrives by surrender. It is when we unclench the fists of the soul, when we say, not my will but yours, that the chains of fear begin to loosen. In that moment we trade the burden of self-mastery for the gift of divine care. A man who insists on steering every turn of his life will live in constant terror of crashing. But the one who entrusts his way to God discovers that even the unexpected detours are guided by a steady hand. And here we must consider the matter of time. One of the chief reasons for worry is impatience. We are creatures bound by clocks and calendars. We grow restless when answers do not appear according to our schedule. Yet God is not hurried. His delays are not denials. What seems to us a painful waiting is often the soil in which deeper blessings take root. Many times we pray for open doors and find them shut, not realizing that the closing of one way preserves us from harm and directs us toward a better end. Think of how many tears have been shed over prayers that, had they been granted, would have proved a snare rather than a blessing. Trust is learning to believe that the silence of heaven is not neglect, but preparation. Nor should we despise the seasons of trial that come upon us. Trials are the chisels of the soul, shaping us into what we could not become by ease alone. The man who has never walked through darkness cannot appreciate the light. The woman who has never felt the sting of loss cannot grasp the sweetness of comfort. We call difficulties setbacks, but in the economy of God, they are often setups, arrangements by which our character is strengthened, our faith refined, and our hope redirected. We pray for strength, and He gives us struggle so that strength may be formed. We pray for courage, and He allows us to face fear so that courage may grow. What seems harsh in the moment proves merciful in the end, if only we trust. It is a strange truth, but one worth embracing. The most trustworthy evidence of God's plan is not that life feels smooth, but that through the storms we are still upheld. The boat may rock, but it does not sink. The fire may burn, but it does not consume. Worry says, I must keep myself safe. Trust says, I am already kept. The difference between the two is not circumstance, but perspective. One sees only the danger, the other sees the deliverer, who is greater than the danger. And what of hope? Without trust, hope shrivels, for hope must have an anchor, and that anchor cannot be found within ourselves. Human strength falters, human plans collapse, human wisdom proves too small. But divine promise does not break. God's plan is not to harm but to bring good, though that good may not wear the clothing we expected. To trust Him is to root our hope in what cannot be shaken. It is to say, even when I do not see the way, there is a way. Even when I cannot make sense of my story, I know the author is faithful. So then, why should we continue in worry? Each worry is a shadow cast by distrust. Each anxious thought is a refusal to rest in the arms of one who has already proven himself faithful. Consider the countless mercies that have already brought you here, the unseen protections that spared you from ruin, the provisions that arrived when you thought yourself forsaken. If he has carried you this far, will he suddenly abandon you now? The very thought is an insult to his nature. He who began a good work will not leave it half finished. He who plants the seed has already seen the harvest. He who numbers the stars has not lost count of your needs. Let us then learn to live with lighter hearts, not because life is easy, but because we are not alone in it. To stop worrying is not to ignore reality, but to embrace a greater reality that the God who shaped the universe hoard days with equal care. Our plans may falter, but his plan endures. Our understanding may dim, but his wisdom shines. And if he has a plan, and he does, then the most rational act we can perform is to trust it. Therefore, when tomorrow threatens you with uncertainty, remember this: the God who has written your story does not tremble at the pages you have not yet read. He has already seen the end, and it is good. Trust him, release worry, walk in peace. For the one who holds the heavens has not forgotten you, and his plan is sure. Worry is one of those things that feels active, as though by turning a matter over in our minds, we are somehow bringing ourselves closer to a solution. Yet when we examine it honestly, we find that worry is motion without progress, energy without fruit, labor without harvest. The heart believes it is doing something important when it worries, but in truth it is wasting its strength. The futility of worry lies in its inability to add even the smallest measure of good to our lives. One cannot, by anxious thought, change the direction of the wind or the passage of time. If worry had the power to resolve difficulty, then the most anxious among us would be the most successful, and the most fearful would be the most secure. But reality proves the opposite. Worry only steals from us while giving nothing in return. The problem with worry is that it pretends to be useful. We tell ourselves that we must think hard about our problems, that if we do not keep them in mind they may somehow slip from our control. There is, of course, a difference between careful thought and anxious thought. Careful thought plans, prepares and acts in wisdom. Anxious thought circles endlessly without resolution, playing scenarios in the mind that never reach conclusion. The worrier confuses repetition with responsibility, as if revisiting the same fear 100 times could make it less threatening. In fact, each repetition only deepens the grooves of anxiety, making it harder to escape. Worry wears out the soul in much the same way that running in place exhausts the body while getting it nowhere. What is perhaps most striking about worry is its dishonesty. It whispers that by entertaining every possible disaster we will be prepared for them. But the truth is that no amount of anticipation can shield us from pain when it comes. Worry simply makes us suffer ahead of time, rehearsing sorrows that may never arrive. We feel the ache of imagined losses, the sting of potential rejections, the weight of failures that exist only in the theater of the mind. Thus we multiply our suffering, enduring not only the troubles that are real but also those that are entirely invented. When the actual trial comes, it is rarely improved by the fact that we have already lived through it 100 times in fear. Another futility of worry is how it distorts perspective. By staring so intently at what may go wrong, we blind ourselves to what is already right. The worrier can be surrounded by blessings yet see only shadows. Gratitude and worry seldom coexist, for the anxious mind is too full of imagined threats to notice present gifts. In this way, worry not only fails to solve tomorrow's problems, but also robs today of its joys. It cheats us of peace in the present moment, replacing it with a gnawing sense of unease that corrodes even the brightest days. We are taught to live one day at a time, but worry insists we live many days at once. The present we cannot enjoy, the future we cannot control, and the past we cannot change. No wonder the heart grows weary under such strain. There is also the matter of trust. Worry is not only futile, it is revealing. It shows where we have placed our confidence. If every anxious thought were peeled back, at its root would be a doubt about whether God is really in control, whether he really cares, whether he can truly bring good out of difficulty. We may not speak such doubts aloud, but worry betrays them. It is, in essence, the belief that everything depends on us, that if we do not hold tightly to every thread, the fabric of our lives will unravel. Yet no amount of clinging can keep the threads from slipping through our fingers. The illusion of control is perhaps the cruelest gift of worry. It makes us feel as if we are doing something important, while in reality we are resisting the very rest that could sustain us. When we step back and look at the futility of worry, its bankruptcy becomes clear. It cannot change outcomes, it cannot prevent pain, it cannot guarantee security. All it can do is consume the strength that might have been spent on faith, action, and joy. It empties the reservoir of courage and leaves the heart dry. To live in worry is to live in perpetual rehearsal for disasters that often never occur, and even when they do, they are not softened by the hours spent dreading them. The energy poured into worry could have been poured into prayer, into gratitude, into service, into love, all things that yield true fruit. But worry produces nothing except fatigue, and the one who gives himself to it discovers at last that he has labored for nothing. God's wisdom stretches far beyond what we can see or grasp. Human beings look at life through a narrow lens, measuring moments by their immediate comfort or pain, by what seems useful or useless, by what appears successful or disappointing. But God does not view life in fragments as we do. He sees the beginning and the end together, the thread and the tapestry at once. What looks like chaos to us is pattern to him, what feels like confusion to us is clarity to him. We mistake our limited perspective for truth, forgetting that the one who wrote the story is not surprised by any of its chapters. When we insist on understanding everything before we trust, we are really asking to be God ourselves, for only he holds that kind of vision. Much of our worry is born from this tension. We look at a closed door and call it loss, while God may be calling it protection. We see delay and call it failure, while God may be shaping character for a greater assignment. We see pain and call it senseless, while God may be working unseen healing that could never come through comfort alone. His wisdom is not the wisdom of men, for it is not bound by time, not chained to appearances, not fooled by surface things. A parent does not give a child fire simply because he asks for it. Love withholds what would destroy. And if this is true of earthly parents, how much more true is it of the one whose love is perfect? What he withholds in mercy, and what he grants in wisdom. The struggle comes in the space between our asking and his answering. In that space, we are tempted to believe he has forgotten, or that our prayers fall unheard. Yet silence is not absence, and delay is not neglect. His ways are higher than ours, his timing wiser than ours, and his purposes deeper than ours. We must remember that what is clear to him will not always be clear to us, at least not immediately. Faith means trusting not only when we understand, but especially when we do not. To trust only when the plan makes sense is not trust at all, it is agreement. Trust begins where agreement ends. Consider how often in life what once seemed disastrous later revealed itself as blessing. The disappointment that turned us away from one path led us unknowingly to the right one. The pain that nearly broke us prepared us to comfort another who would one day face the same valley. The delay that felt like wasted years positioned us for an opportunity we could not have managed before. We seldom recognize wisdom in the moment. It often comes disguised as confusion or even cruelty. But time exposes what faith already knows, that God was never careless with us, never inattentive, never without a purpose. To rest in his wisdom is to admit our limitations. We are not asked to know everything, but to trust the one who does. We are not asked to see the whole road, but to take the step placed before us. Worry demands a map, trust accepts a lantern. Worry demands explanations, trust is content with presence. And when we lean into his wisdom, we discover that we can endure mystery, we can live with questions, and we can walk through uncertainty, because we are confident that the one leading us is not lost. The human heart rebels against not knowing. We crave answers, clarity, certainty. But perhaps the deeper gift is not in having every answer, but in being held by the answer himself. Our finite minds could not bear the weight of infinite knowledge. We are spared more than we realize by being asked simply to trust. It is an invitation to humility, to surrender, to peace. For if God's wisdom is greater than our understanding, then we can finally release the burden of trying to make sense of everything and instead rest in the assurance that sense already exists, even if it has not yet been revealed to us. Trust grows when we surrender, and surrender is one of the hardest lessons a human heart can learn. From childhood we are taught to cling, to hold fast, to protect what is ours, to plan, to secure, to control. The world tells us that if we do not grasp tightly enough, life will slip through our fingers, and so we cling to our plans, to our possessions, to our fears, even to our own pain. But the irony is that the tighter we cling, the more anxious we become, because deep down we know that life is too vast to control. No matter how hard we try, we cannot guarantee outcomes, we cannot shield ourselves from every sorrow, we cannot dictate every detail of tomorrow. The illusion of control feeds worry, but the practice of surrender feeds trust. Surrender is not passivity, nor is it weakness. It is not throwing up our hands in despair and refusing to act. Rather, it is laying down the burden of self-rule and acknowledging that there is a greater hand guiding our story. It is the humble confession that we are not gods, and therefore we cannot carry the weight of the universe on our shoulders. When we surrender, we do not cease to act, but we act from a place of rest rather than fear. We still plan, but we no longer idolize our plans. We still labor, but we no longer believe our labor is what keeps the world turning. Surrender is freedom, because it places the outcomes in the hands of one who is wiser than we are. The paradox is that peace is often found not in gaining more control, but in releasing it. The anxious soul is like a clenched fist, straining with effort, trembling with exhaustion. The trusting soul is like an open hand resting, ready to receive what is given and release what is taken. Many people search for peace as if it were a hidden treasure buried somewhere in the future. They imagine that once they reach a certain stage of life, once they achieve a certain goal, once their circumstances align, then peace will come. But peace is not a destination, it is a decision. It arrives the moment we let go of the false belief that we must manage everything ourselves. Surrender is tested most when life takes an unexpected turn. A diagnosis, a loss, a failure, a betrayal. These are the moments when our grip feels most threatened. We want to wrestle control back, to demand answers, to force solutions. Yet it is precisely here that surrender becomes most necessary. Trust does not mean we deny the pain or pretend the storm does not rage. It means that in the midst of the storm we place our confidence in the one who calms seas with a word. It means we believe even if the storm does not cease, we are still held. There is a beauty that comes when a soul finally yields. The restless striving quiets, the endless calculations slow, the constant rehearsal of fears begins to fade. We find ourselves lighter, not because the burden has vanished, but because we no longer insist on carrying it alone. Surrender transforms the heart from a battlefield into a place of rest. The very act of releasing control creates for trust to grow, for peace to deepen, for love to flourish. A clenched heart cannot receive, but an open one can. It is worth remembering that surrender is not a single act, but a daily posture. We do not hand everything over once and for all and never struggle again. Each day presents new fears, new temptations to seize control, new invitations to release. The practice of trust is cultivated moment by moment, choice by choice, as we learn to live with hands open rather than fists closed. And though the surrender may feel costly at first, the fruit it bears is priceless. Calm in the midst of uncertainty, strength in the face of weakness, peace that the world cannot explain. Trust grows in surrender because it is only when we release control that we discover how faithful God truly is. As long as we are clinging to our own strength, we cannot experience the full measure of His. As long as we are writing our own story, we cannot marvel at the beauty of His. But when we yield, when we finally rest in His plan rather than our own, we begin to see that His way is not only wiser but kinder, more generous, and more secure than anything we could have designed ourselves. One of the deepest lessons we must learn is that delays are not denials. We live in a world that prizes speed, where everything is measured by how quickly it can be achieved, answered, or resolved. If something takes longer than expected, we grow restless and begin to wonder if it will happen at all. We apply this same impatience to the workings of God, expecting Him to operate according to our timetable. When He does not, we assume the answer is no, that our prayers have fallen flat, or that our desires are ignored. Yet the truth is far richer. What feels like delay to us is often preparation in His hands. His timing is not late, it is perfect, because it unfolds in harmony with a wisdom that knows all things. It is not easy to wait, especially when the heart longs for something deeply. Every passing day feels like proof that nothing is changing. But delay is not a sign of neglect. It is often a sign that something greater is being woven into the story. A seed placed in the soil does not sprout overnight. It is hidden, unseen, beneath the earth, undergoing a process that is silent but necessary. To the casual eye, it looks as though nothing is happening, but in truth, everything essential is happening. Roots are forming, strength is being built, and only in the right season will the shoot break through. Our lives are much the same. God plants desires, dreams, and prayers in the soil of time, and then He waits with us until the season is right for them to emerge. Delays test the heart because they strip away illusions. We are forced to face the question: do we trust God only when He works quickly, or do we trust Him because He is God, no matter the pace? Waiting reveals whether our faith rests in the gift or in the giver. If we trust only as long as our prayers are answered on schedule, then our trust is shallow, built on conditions. But if we continue to trust even when the silence stretches long, then our faith is rooted deeply, anchored not in circumstances but in character. We learn to believe that even when heaven seems still, God's hand is not idle. There are countless times when what we thought was a devastating delay turned out to be protection. The opportunity we begged for was withheld, only for us to discover later that it would have harmed us. The relationship we thought we could not live without ended, only for us to realize it would have broken us. The door that remained shut led us down a hallway we never expected, where blessings awaited that we could not have imagined. Delay does not mean rejection. It often means redirection. And what feels like lost time is often saved time, because we are spared from walking a road that was never meant for us. We must also understand that God's timing works not only for our benefit, but often for the benefit of others as well. There are times when our waiting aligns with the unseen needs of another person, or with a larger plan that ends many lives intersecting at just the right moment. If He were to answer us too soon, the pieces would not fit together. What looks like a pause is often a synchronization, where countless threads are being drawn together into a design we cannot yet see. To trust in delay is to trust that the tapestry is larger than our single thread, and that the master weaver has not forgotten where ours belongs. Perhaps the hardest part of delay is the silence. When prayers rise day after day, and the only reply seems to be stillness, the heart aches with loneliness. Yet even silence has its purpose. It draws us deeper into dependence, stripping away the noise of our demands and leading us into the quiet where His presence becomes enough. Sometimes God delays answers so that we may learn to love Him for Himself, not only for what He gives. In the silence, we discover a companionship that does not fade, a presence that fails, a love that does not depend on outcomes. Delay is one of the greatest teachers of trust. It teaches us patience, it teaches us humility, and it teaches us hope. It loosens our grip on immediate satisfaction and strengthens our confidence in eternal faithfulness. While the world clamors for instant answers, those who trust God learn to wait with expectation, not despair. For if He has promised good, then no delay can cancel that promise. It can only shape the moment when it will be fulfilled, and when it is fulfilled, it will be in such a way that we will say with certainty the wait was worth it. Trials have a way of entering our lives without warning, and they often feel like intruders, unwelcome, painful, and disruptive. Our first instinct is usually to escape them as quickly as possible, to pray for them to end, or to avoid them altogether. Yet the reality is that trials, though bitter in taste, are among the most shaping forces we will ever encounter. They are not accidents, nor are they signs that God has abandoned us. Rather, they are instruments of refinement, chisels in the hand of a master who knows how to form our character into something stronger, deeper, and more beautiful than ease ever could. What we call setbacks are often the very soil in which growth takes root. It is easy to believe we are strong when life is smooth. Comfort makes us feel secure, and success convinces us we have control. But it is only in trials that the true measure of our faith is revealed. A tree that has never faced the wind may appear sturdy, but the first storm exposes its weakness. Likewise, a soul that has never been tested may look faithful, but it is in the seasons of struggle that faith shows its resilience. Trials strip away illusions, forcing us to see what cannot be shaken. They remind us that our strength is not enough, and in doing so they push us to lean on the strength of God. Without difficulty, trust remains shallow. With difficulty, it grows roots that can withstand anything. There is also a strange mercy in the way trials reorder our priorities. When everything is comfortable, we are easily distracted by the trivial and the temporary. We chase pleasures. We build our identity on fragile foundations. But when trials come, those things fall away, and we are left to see what truly matters. Loss teaches us the value of love. Pain awakens us to compassion. Struggle draws us into prayer. It is often in the darkest valleys that we discover the brightest truths, and though we would never choose the valley, we look back later and realize it was there that we were most deeply transformed. Trials not only shape us inwardly, but also prepare us outwardly. The experiences we endure become the very tools we use to help others. A person who has never suffered can offer sympathy, but not true comfort. Only the one who has been through the fire can speak with authority about survival, resilience, and hope. In this way, trials equip us to be vessels of encouragement, turning our pain into a gift for others. What feels like breaking in the moment often becomes the bridge by which someone else crosses their own struggle. God wastes nothing, not even our wounds. The refining nature of trials also teaches us patience. In suffering, we cannot rush the process, we cannot force the outcome. We must endure, often longer than we would like, and in doing so we learn to wait. Waiting in pain deepens endurance, and endurance builds character, and character strengthens hope. The person who has endured much is rarely shaken by little, because their soul has been tempered like steel in the furnace of trial. They are not easily swayed by fear, for they have already faced it. They are not easily undone by uncertainty, for they have already walked through seasons of not knowing and have seen that God remains faithful. It is tempting to view trials as obstacles on the path, but in truth they are part of the path itself. Without them, we would remain untested, unrefined, unready. With them, we are shaped, deepened, and matured. Trials turn theories of faith into lived realities. They transform belief from something spoken into something proven. They show us that trust is not just an idea but a lifeline, one that holds even when the storm rages fiercest. We do not glorify trials for their own sake, nor do we deny the pain they bring. But we recognize that in the hands of God, trials are never wasted. They are purposeful even when we cannot see the purpose. They are redemptive, even when we cannot yet see the redemption. And though they may bend us low, they will not break us, for the one who allows them is the same one who sustains us through them. In this way, trials become not stumbling blocks but stepping stones, carrying us closer to the person we were always meant to become. When you begin to trust God's timing, you learn the art of letting go. The hardest battles are not fought outside, but inside, where worry, doubt, and impatience constantly fight to control you. You may be praying for something, waiting for an answer, and in that waiting you start to wonder if God has forgotten you. But faith means releasing your tight grip on control and believing that the one who holds the future knows what he is doing. Letting go is not weakness, it is strength, because it takes courage to release your fear and put it in God's hands. When you let go, you open the door to move in ways you couldn't have imagined. Many people delay their blessings because they keep trying to force outcomes on their own terms. But when you surrender and say, God, I trust your plan even if I don't understand it, that is when miracles happen. Think of it like holding a seed in your hand. If you refuse to plant it, insisting on keeping it safe, it will never grow. But when you let it go into the soil, trusting the process, it takes root, and over time it grows into something much greater. In the same way, when you let go of your fear, your plans, or even your pain, God transforms them into something bigger than you could dream of. Letting go does not mean doing nothing. It means shifting the weight of your burden from yourself to the one who promised to carry it. It is saying, Lord, I will do my part, but I leave the outcome to you. That shift not only brings peace, it also allows God to align things in ways you couldn't arrange by yourself. And the beautiful thing is, when you let go and trust Him, you will look back one day and realize that everything happened exactly when it was supposed to, and in ways better than you imagined.